Jake Morrison adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time before entering the massive chamber. The Galactic Council building stretched high above him, its crystal walls catching light from 3 different suns. After 50 years of peaceful relations, this meeting felt different. The message had been brief and cold. No explanation, just a demand for Earth's immediate presence. The chamber itself was designed to make visitors feel small. 12 towering seats arranged in a circle, each one representing an ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Jake had been here many times before, usually for trade agreements or colony permits. Today the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken threats. Council Prime Valdris, a reptilian creature whose scales had turned silver with age, rose from the center seat. His voice carried the weight of millennia when he spoke. Ambassador Morrison, humanity has reached a crossroads. For 50 years we have watched your species expand across our galaxy. We have been patient, perhaps too patient. Jake kept his expression neutral, though his heart began to race. Prime Valdris, humanity has followed all established protocols. Our colonies are within permitted zones, our trade agreements are current, and we have maintained peaceful relations with all council members. A harsh laugh echoed from one of the other seats. Councillor Threk, whose species resembled giant insects, clicked his mandibles together. Peaceful? You call your military buildup peaceful? Your secret shipyards, your weapons research? Every species maintains defensive capabilities, Jake replied carefully. The Council itself possesses the largest fleet in known space. We possess it because we have earned the right through age and wisdom, Valdris said, his yellow eyes fixing on Jake. Your species has existed in space for barely a century. You are children playing with fire. Jake felt the familiar frustration that came with these conversations. The Council viewed humanity as newcomers, barely worth consideration. They had no idea what humans were truly capable of when pushed too far. What exactly is the Council proposing? Jake asked. Valdris gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, surrounded by human colonies, trade routes, and military installations. Integration, Valdris said simply. Humanity will surrender all military vessels to Council authority. Your independent colonization efforts will cease immediately. All human settlements will accept Council governance. Your species will take its proper place under our guidance. The words hit Jake like physical blows. He had expected restrictions, perhaps new regulations. This was complete subjugation. And, if Earth refuses? He managed to ask. Refusal is not an option, Threk interjected. Corrective measures will be implemented. Your species will learn its place in the galactic order, willingly or otherwise. Jake thought of Lisa Wang back on Earth, probably reviewing defense reports at this very moment. She had always insisted that humanity needed to be ready for something like this. Most diplomats had called her paranoid. Now he wished he had listened more carefully to her warnings. I will need to consult with my government, Jake said. Of course, Valdris replied, though his tone suggested this was merely a formality. You have 30 Earth days to provide your answer. Use this time wisely, Ambassador. The Council's patience has limits. 3 days later, Jake stood in the Situation Room beneath the Pentagon, watching President Kate Sullivan pace back and forth. The woman who had led Earth through unprecedented prosperity now faced its greatest crisis. They want complete surrender, Jake reported to the assembled leaders. No military, no independent colonies, no self-governance. We become another client, species under their control. Lisa Wang, Director of Earth Defense Forces, slammed her hand on the table. After everything we've built, after 50 years of following their rules and proving ourselves, they want to turn us into pets? The Council sees our expansion as a threat, Jake explained. They believe we're growing too fast, becoming too powerful. How powerful can they think we are? Asked Tony Rodriguez, chief engineer of Earth's most classified projects. We have maybe 300 ships compared to their thousands. Lisa. And Tony exchanged a look that President Sullivan caught immediately. What aren't you telling me? Sullivan demanded. Lisa took a deep breath. Madam President, For the past 20 years, we've been preparing for exactly this scenario. We haven't just been building colonies. We've been building a defense network. She activated the room's main display, showing a three-dimensional map of human space. Red dots appeared throughout the galaxy, far beyond Earth's known territories. Every mining station, every research outpost, every trading post has been designed with dual purposes. We have weapons platforms, shipyards, and supply depots in places the Council doesn't even know we've explored. Tony stepped forward. The ships they know about are just the ones we wanted them to see. Our real fleet has been built in secret, using technologies they've never encountered. President Sullivan stared at the display in amazement. How many ships? Just over 2,000 combat vessels, Lisa replied, plus support craft, automated defense systems, and mobile production facilities. You built all this without my knowledge? The previous administration authorized the program, Lisa explained. Each president has been briefed upon taking office. The information was classified at the highest levels to prevent Council intelligence from discovering our preparations. Sullivan turned to Jake. What's your assessment of their military capabilities? Individually, their ships are more advanced than anything we've publicly displayed, Jake admitted. But their tactics are ancient, predictable. They haven't fought a real war in centuries. They're used to overwhelming primitive species with numbers and superior technology. They don't know what they're dealing with, Tony added. Human engineering has always focused on adaptability and efficiency. We build ships that can be modified in the field, weapons that can be adjusted for different situations. Their vessels are powerful, but inflexible. President Sullivan stopped pacing and looked at each person in the room. Are you telling me that we can actually fight the Galactic Council and win? Lisa nodded grimly. We can't match their numbers in a direct confrontation, but we don't need to. We just need to make the cost of conquest higher than they're willing to pay. There's something else, Jake said quietly. During my years at the Council, I've made contacts with some of the younger species. Not all of them are happy with Council rule. Some might be willing to help us if we can prove we're serious about resisting. President Sullivan walked to the window looking out at the city below. Millions of people going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire way of life hung in the balance. What kind of message does surrendering send to the galaxy? She asked. That humans can be bullied into submission? That 50 years of peaceful cooperation means nothing? She turned back to face the room. And what kind of message does fighting send? That humanity will not be enslaved, Lisa said firmly. That we'd rather die free than live as subjects. President Sullivan nodded slowly. Then we send a message they'll never forget. Jake returned to the Council. Tell them Earth's answer is no. As Jake prepared to leave for what might be his final diplomatic mission, he couldn't help but smile. The Council had made the same mistake that bullies throughout human history had made. They assumed that superior strength guaranteed victory. They were about to learn why that assumption had destroyed every empire humanity had ever faced. The Council fleet arrived at Earth exactly 30 days after the ultimatum. Valdris had brought nearly 500 ships, a force large enough to crush any rebellion before it could begin. Or so he thought. Captain Rick Chen watched the enemy formation from the bridge of his stealth ship, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. His fleet of 40 vessels had been waiting here for 3 weeks, invisible to Council sensors. The technology that made this possible was purely human innovation, something the ancient species had never bothered to develop. They're moving into standard siege formation, reported his tactical officer. Looks like they plan to blockade Earth and wait for surrender. Rick smiled grimly. The Council was following their usual playbook: overwhelming force, intimidation, then occupation. It had worked for them for thousands of years against species that had nowhere to run and no way to fight back. Humanity was different. Send the signal, Rick ordered. Operation Payback is active. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships that had been hiding for months suddenly revealed themselves near Council strongholds. The alien leaders had been so focused on Earth that they never considered humanity might strike back. Dr. Amy Foster stood in the command center of Station Alpha, humanity's most secret facility. Built inside a hollow asteroid, it had taken 10 years to construct and equip. The Council had no idea it existed, hidden in a system they considered worthless. "We're receiving confirmation signals from all strike teams," Amy reported to Lisa Wang, who had arrived 2 days earlier. "Chicago team is in position near the Council's main shipyard. Denver team has eyes on their command center. All teams, report ready." Amy had spent 15 years working for the Council as a research scientist before quietly returning to Earth. During that time, she had mapped their defenses, studied their weaknesses, and identified critical targets. The Council's arrogance had made her job easy. They never suspected that a human scientist might be gathering intelligence. "What about their response capabilities?" Lisa asked. "That's their biggest weakness," Amy explained. "Each Council species operates independently. They don't have joint command structures or integrated communications. When we hit them simultaneously, it will take hours for them to coordinate a response." On the bridge of his flagship, Valdris reviewed the reports from his fleet commanders. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The human homeworld lay before them, defenseless and ready for occupation. "Have they responded to our presence?" he asked his communications officer. "Negative, Prime. No military response, no diplomatic contact. Their ships appear to be powered down in defensive positions around their planet." Valdris nodded with satisfaction. Humans were showing the same behavior as every other species when faced with Council authority. Fear, then submission. It was the natural order. Begin the final approach. Prepare boarding parties for the government centers. This will be over within... The communications officer suddenly straightened, his features showing alarm. "Prime, we're receiving emergency signals from the homeworld. Multiple attacks in progress across Council space." "Impossible," Valdris hissed. "Every human ship is accounted for. They're all here or at their colonies." The tactical display flickered to life, showing red alerts appearing throughout Council territory. Shipyards under attack, command centers being raided, supply depots destroyed. The humans weren't just defending Earth. They were attacking everywhere at once. Ben Parker crouched behind the mining equipment on Kepler Station, watching Council troops move through the corridors. The aliens thought they were conducting a routine inspection of a human mining operation. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The station looked like every other human mining facility in the sector. Basic equipment, small crew quarters, minimal defenses. What the Council couldn't see were the hidden weapon caches, the concealed command centers, and the fact that every miner on the station was actually a trained soldier. "Wait for it," Ben whispered into his communicator. "Let them get deeper into the station." Human colonies throughout the galaxy had been built with this moment in mind. Each settlement was designed to look helpless while hiding sophisticated defenses. The Council had dismissed them as soft targets, perfect for quick occupation. They were about to learn otherwise. Back in Earth's system, Rick Chen's fleet began its attack. The stealth ships dropped their invisibility screens and opened fire on the Council fleet's rear guard. Weapons that the aliens had never seen before tore through their shields like paper. "What are those energy signatures?" demanded Valdris, watching his ships disappear from the tactical display. "Unknown technology, Prime," his science officer reported. "Their weapons appear to phase shift through our shields. Our defensive systems cannot adapt." Rick's ships moved like dancers through space, never staying in one position long enough for the enemy to target them effectively. Human pilots had trained for this kind of combat their entire careers. The Council crews, used to overwhelming stationary targets, couldn't adjust to the fluid battle style. "This is impossible," Valdris growled. "They're primitives. How are they—" Another wave of reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Council facilities were falling one after another. Human forces weren't just attacking randomly. They were hitting strategic targets with surgical precision, crippling the Council's ability to respond to the crisis. Tony Rodriguez monitored the battle from his command center on Luna. The weapon systems he had designed were performing even better than expected. Human engineering had always focused on adaptability, and it was paying off now. Council ships are trying to reconfigure their shields, reported one of his engineers. Too late, Tony replied. By the time they figure out how to stop our current weapons, we'll have switched to something else. That was the key to human military thinking. Never rely on a single advantage. Always have backup plans, alternative approaches, and the ability to change tactics in the middle of a fight. The Council's rigid military doctrine had no answer for such flexibility. On Kepler Station, Ben Parker's trap was ready to spring. The Council troops had spread throughout the facility, making themselves perfect targets. Now, he whispered. The mining station exploded into violence. Human civilians revealed themselves as seasoned fighters, attacking from hidden positions throughout the complex. The Council troops, expecting easy occupation, found themselves in a deadly maze with enemies on all sides. Similar scenes played out on dozens of human colonies. What should have been simple takeovers became costly battles. The Council's carefully planned occupation was turning into a nightmare. Valdris watched his perfect plan crumble around him. Half his fleet was engaged with the mysterious human ships, while reports continued flooding in about attacks across Council space. This wasn't how primitive species were supposed to behave. Prime, his communications officer called out, voice shaking. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. President Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen, calm and determined. Council Prime Valdris, I believe you wanted Earth's answer to your ultimatum. Here it is. Humanity will never surrender its freedom. We will never bow to your authority. And if you want to control us, you'll have to fight for every inch. The transmission ended, leaving Valdris staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders while their mighty fleet continued to suffer losses to an enemy they had completely underestimated. The humans hadn't just said no to the Council's demands. They had declared war on the most powerful force in the galaxy. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. 3 months into the war, General Mike Davis stood in the war room studying the latest battle reports. What had started as humanity's desperate defense had become something nobody expected. The humans were winning. Sir, we've just received confirmation from the Rigel sector, reported his aide. The Council's 4th Fleet has been destroyed. Captain Rodriguez reports minimal losses on our side. Mike nodded, marking another victory on the star map. The red marks, showing human victories, now outnumbered the blue marks of Council strongholds. It seemed impossible, but the numbers didn't lie. What's the status of their reinforcements? Mike asked. That's the interesting part, sir. They're not sending any. Our intelligence suggests the Council species are arguing among themselves. Some want to increase the war effort. Others want to negotiate. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. The Council wasn't a unified government like Earth's. It was 12 different species working together out of habit and tradition. When things went wrong, those old rivalries quickly surfaced. Dr. Sam Johnson worked frantically in his laboratory, making final adjustments to humanity's greatest advantage. The quantum communication network allowed instant contact across any distance. While Council fleets took days or weeks to coordinate their movements, human forces could adapt their strategies in real time. We're ready for the next phase, Sam reported to Mike over the quantum link. Every human ship, station, and colony is now connected to the network. We can coordinate battles across the entire galaxy as if they were happening in the same system. This technology had taken 20 years to develop and was based on principles the Council had never explored. Their ancient species preferred tried and tested methods over risky innovation. Humanity's willingness to experiment with new ideas was paying off in ways the aliens couldn't understand. Meanwhile, Maria Santos was conducting the most important mission of the war. Hidden on a neutral trading station, she met secretly with representatives from several Council species. These weren't the ancient leaders but younger members who had grown tired of the old ways. The Zephyrians are interested, Maria reported to President Sullivan through an encrypted channel. They've been under Council control for 800 years and want independence. The Corvin traders are also unhappy. They say the Council's trade restrictions have hurt their economy for too long. This was humanity's secret weapon that the Council had never considered. Not every species in the galaxy was happy with the current system. Many had joined the Council out of fear or necessity, not choice. Now that someone was successfully fighting back, alternatives were becoming possible. "What do they want in return for their help?" Sullivan asked. "Freedom to govern themselves, open trade agreements, and access to human technology. Nothing we can't provide." The first major defection came 2 weeks later. The Corvan Merchant Republic announced they were withdrawing from the Council and signing a mutual defense pact with Earth. Within days, 3 more species followed their example. Valdris watched his empire crumble from his flagship, now orbiting a heavily fortified Council world far from the fighting. The reports streaming in painted a picture he refused to believe. Primitive humans were not just defeating Council forces. They were turning his own allies against him. "The Zephyrians have officially joined the Human Alliance," reported his intelligence chief. "They're sharing their knowledge of our defense systems and troop movements." "Traitors," Valdris hissed, "after everything the Council has done for them." "Prime, perhaps we should consider opening negotiations with the humans. The war is not going as planned." Valdris spun around, his yellow eyes blazing with fury. "We do not negotiate with primitives. Double our military production. Call up reserve fleets from every loyal species. We will crush this rebellion." But the reserves were already being crushed. Captain Rick Chen's stealth fleets had spent months mapping Council territory, identifying weaknesses, and positioning themselves for maximum damage. Every time the Council tried to mass their forces, human ships appeared from nowhere to disrupt their plans. Tony Rodriguez had outdone himself with the latest weapons systems. Human ships could now reconfigure their armaments during battle, switching from anti-ship weapons to anti-station systems in minutes. Council forces never knew what they would face next. "Their predictability is their weakness," Tony explained to his engineering team. "They've been using the same tactics for centuries. We change our approach every battle, and they can't adapt fast enough." The breakthrough came when Ben Parker's colonial forces captured a major Council supply depot. Inside, they found something unexpected: detailed records of every species under Council control, including their grievances and secret communications. "Look at this," Ben transmitted to Earth Command. "The Council has been dealing with rebellions for decades. They've been suppressing independence movements on over 50 worlds. These species are ready to revolt. They just needed someone to show them it was possible." Lisa Wang reviewed the intelligence with growing excitement. "This changes everything. We're not just fighting a war. We're starting a galactic revolution." The next phase of the war began immediately. Instead of just attacking Council military targets, human forces started liberating oppressed worlds. Each victory brought new allies and revealed more about the Council's true nature. Dr. Amy Foster's knowledge of Council operations proved invaluable during these liberation campaigns. She knew which worlds were most heavily controlled and which populations would be eager for freedom. "The Council maintains control through fear and isolation," Amy explained to the Liberation Fleet commanders. "They tell each species that rebellion is impossible, that they're alone against an overwhelming force. When they see humans winning battles and offering real alternatives, everything changes." The liberation of Theta Prime was the turning point. The planet had been under Council control for over 1,000 years, its population convinced that resistance was hopeless. When human ships arrived and defeated the Council garrison in less than 6 hours, word spread throughout the galaxy. "We're receiving surrender requests from Council forces on 12 different worlds," reported Maria Santos from her diplomatic station. "They're asking for terms, not demanding our surrender." President Sullivan called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. The war that was supposed to last years was ending after less than 6 months, but not in the way anyone had expected. "The Council is fragmenting," Sullivan announced to the assembled leaders. "Half their member species have either joined us or declared neutrality. Their military is in retreat across most sectors. Valdris is still fighting, but he's running out of allies." Mike Davis pulled up the tactical display showing the current state of the galaxy. Human-controlled territory was marked in green, allied species in blue, neutral zones in yellow, and remaining Council strongholds in red. The red areas were shrinking rapidly. "We need to decide what kind of victory we want," Mike said carefully. "We can crush the remaining Council forces completely, or we can offer them a chance to surrender with dignity." Lisa Wang leaned forward. What's our end goal here? Do we want to become the new galactic empire or do we want something different? It was the question that would define humanity's future and the future of the galaxy. The Council had ruled through force and fear for millennia. Now that humans had the power to replace them, what kind of rulers would they become? The answer would determine whether this war ended the age of galactic tyranny or simply replaced one empire with another. Admiral John Hayes commanded the largest fleet in human history as it approached the Council's ancient homeworld. 200 human ships flew alongside vessels from 37 allied species. The final battle of the war was about to begin. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the planet's surface, reported his communications officer. Multiple species are requesting immediate liberation. It appears there are uprisings in several major cities. John smiled grimly. Even on their home world, the Council was losing control. Word of human victories had spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring rebellions on worlds that had been quiet for centuries. What's the status of Council defenses? John asked. Minimal, sir. Most of their fleet has been recalled to defend this system, but we're still outnumbering them 3-1. Plus, we have allies who know their defense systems inside and out. The Council had made their last stand at the wrong place in time. They were fighting with outdated tactics against an enemy that had spent months studying their weaknesses. The outcome was no longer in doubt. On the planet below, Valdris stood in the ancient council chamber where this war had begun. The 12 seats that had once held the galaxy's most powerful rulers now sat mostly empty. Only 4 species remained loyal to the old order. Prime, our fleet reports the humans are approaching with overwhelming force, his aide reported nervously. They're requesting permission to negotiate surrender terms. Never, Valdris hissed. The Council has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not bow to primitives who have barely learned to leave their home system. But even as he spoke, explosions echoed from the city outside. The local population was rising up against their ancient rulers. The very people who had once feared the Council were now fighting for their freedom. Dr. Nina Brown worked frantically in her temporary office aboard the flagship, preparing the documents that would reshape galactic civilization. As Earth's leading expert on interspecies government, she had been tasked with creating a new system to replace the Council's authoritarian rule. The key is voluntary participation, Nina explained to President Sullivan over quantum communication. Every species must choose freely whether to join the new government. No more forced membership, no more subjugation of weaker civilizations. What about enforcement? Sullivan asked. How do we prevent another council from forming? That's the beautiful part. The new system is designed around cooperation, not domination. Instead of one species or group controlling others, every member has equal representation. Decisions are made by consensus, not decree. Nina's proposal was revolutionary. Instead of replacing one empire with another, humanity was offering something the galaxy had never seen: true democratic cooperation between species. The space battle began at dawn, local time. Council ships fought desperately, but their hearts weren't in it. Many crews had families on worlds that had already been liberated by human forces. They were fighting to preserve a system that had oppressed their own people for generations. Admiral John Hayes coordinated the battle with surgical precision. Human ships focused on disabling enemy vessels rather than destroying them. Every council ship that surrendered was treated with respect. Its crew offered the chance to join the liberation forces. Admiral, the council flagship is requesting a ceasefire, reported his tactical officer. They want to discuss terms. Patch me through to their commander, John ordered. The face that appeared on screen was not Valdris, but a younger council officer with exhaustion written across his features. I am Commander Thalen of the Council Defense Force, the alien said. Prime Valdris refuses to surrender, but the majority of our officers believe continued resistance is pointless. We wish to negotiate. What are your terms? John asked. Safe passage for those who wish to leave council space, amnesty for military personnel who surrender, and protection for civilians on the surface. John nodded. Agreed. but we also require access to all council records and databases. The galaxy deserves to know the full extent of your government's actions over the centuries. Below on the planet, the uprising had reached the council chamber itself. Valdris found himself surrounded by his own people, all demanding an end to the war that was destroying their civilization. "You are making a mistake," Valdris told the crowd. "The humans will enslave you just as we did. They will take our place as your rulers." An elderly alien stepped forward from the crowd. "Prime Valdris, we have monitored human communications throughout this war. They are not seeking to rule us. They are offering us something we have never had, the choice to govern ourselves." This was the moment that changed everything. The council's own people were rejecting their authority in favor of human promises of freedom and self-determination. Within hours, the council's military had officially surrendered. Valdris himself was taken into custody, along with the other leaders who had refused to accept the new reality. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. President Kate Sullivan stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species had come to Earth to witness the founding of the new government. The old council chamber had been too small and too tainted by history for this moment. "Today marks the end of an age," Sullivan announced to the assembled delegates. "For thousands of years, our galaxy has been ruled by fear, by the belief that might makes right. Today, we choose a different path." Dr. Nina Brown presented the charter of the new Galactic Federation. Unlike the Council's constitution, which had been written by the powerful to control the weak, this document guaranteed rights to every species regardless of their size, technology, or military strength. Every member species retains complete sovereignty over their own worlds, Nina explained. The Federation exists to facilitate cooperation, trade, and mutual defense. It cannot compel any species to take actions against their will. The vote was unanimous. Even species that had been loyal to the Council until the very end chose to join the new Federation. The alternative was isolation in a galaxy that had moved beyond authoritarian rule. Maria Santos was elected as the Federation's first Secretary General, representing humanity's role as the catalyst for change. But the position came with strict limits. No single species could dominate the Federation the way the Council had dominated the galaxy. "We didn't fight this war to become the new rulers," Maria said in her acceptance speech. "We fought to ensure that no one could rule over others without their consent. The Federation belongs to all of us equally." Admiral John Hayes was tasked with overseeing the transition of Council military forces to the new system. Many former Council officers chose to join Federation Defense Forces, bringing their experience to help protect the new order. Tony Rodriguez led the effort to share human technology with all Federation members. The quantum communication network, stealth systems, and adaptive weapons that had won the war were freely distributed to any species that wanted them. "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied," Tony explained to skeptics who worried about giving away humanity's advantages. "The more advanced our allies become, the stronger we all are." The transformation was remarkable. Within a year, the galaxy was more peaceful and prosperous than it had been in centuries. Trade flourished between species that had been enemies for generations. Scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. The Council's homeworld became the Federation capital, but its ancient chamber was converted into a museum. The 12 towering seats remained as a reminder of what the galaxy had rejected: rule by the powerful over the powerless. President Sullivan visited the museum on the first anniversary of the war's end. She stood looking at Valdris's empty seat, thinking about how different things could have been. The Council's mistake wasn't trying to control humanity, she said to Jake Morrison, who had joined her for the visit. Their mistake was believing that control was the only way to govern. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through conquest, but through example. They had shown that cooperation was stronger than domination, that freedom was more powerful than fear, and that even the oldest empires could fall when faced with a better idea. The age of the Council was over. The age of freedom had begun.